You know that feeling, the one where your phone rings in the dead of night, and before you even see the caller ID, your stomach drops, a cold dread seizing you because you know it's bad news. That's how it started for me. Elara, a little over a year ago. One moment, I was drifting off, exhausted from another double shift, dreaming of a quiet weekend with my daughter, Lily. The next, a shrill, unfamiliar ring cut through the silence, flashing emergency across the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs as I answered, bracing myself for the words that would shatter my world. It wasn't just bad news. It was the kind of news that forces you to face the absolute worst in people you thought you knew best. Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you'd consider subscribing to my channel, it would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. My world, in many ways, revolved around Lily. She was everything. As a single mother, I'd learned to stretch every dollar, every hour, every ounce of my energy to give her a good life. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes pulling triple shifts, often falling asleep at the kitchen table with bills still spread before me. But Lily's laugh, her bright, curious eyes, those were my fuel. She was 17, a whirlwind of artistic talent and quick wit, ready to conquer her senior year. Then, that phone call. The drive to the hospital was a blur of flashing streetlights and a sickening throb in my temples. When I finally walked into the emergency room, the sterile scent of antiseptic hit me first, then the sight of Lily, so still, so pale, in that harsh fluorescent light. Her arm was in an awkward cast, but the real fear came from the team of doctors gathered around her, their faces grim. A complex fracture, they explained, and more concerning, signs of traumatic brain injury. The words swam around me: urgent, specialized, critical. A tall, solemn-faced neurosurgeon, Dr. Alistair, sat me down and outlined the options. There was the standard procedure, covered by insurance, which carried a significant risk of long-term complications, maybe even permanent cognitive impairment. Then, there was an advanced, specialized surgery, not covered by insurance, which boasted a 95% success rate for full recovery. The cost, however, was astronomical, a number that echoed in my mind like a death knell. It was a sum I didn't have, not even close. My savings, meticulously built over years, would barely scratch the surface. I looked at Lily's fragile form, her chest rising and falling imperceptibly. The choice wasn't a choice at all. "We go with the best option," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Dr. Alistair nodded, understanding. "The window is narrow. Mrs. Evans, we need to act quickly." My mind raced, frantically searching for an answer, a solution, then a name. A glimmer of desperate hope surfaced: my parents, Richard and Eleanor. They had always projected an image of perfect generosity, of family values, of being well-to-do. Surely, now they would step up. They had to. I stepped into the cold hospital hallway, my fingers trembling as I dialed their number. My dad, Richard, answered, his voice jovial. "Elara, kiddo, everything all right?" He sounded like he was in the middle of a golf game, far away from my nightmare. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, it's Lily. She had a terrible accident. She needs urgent surgery, a very specialized one. It's not covered by insurance, and it's a lot." There was a brief silence, punctuated by a faint clinking sound in the background. Perhaps ice in a glass. Then, my mother. Eleanor, cut in over speakerphone, her voice clear and precise. Oh, Elara, darling, are you certain it's not covered? That doesn't sound right. And honestly, the timing is just dreadful. Richard and I just finalized our around-the-world cruise with Bethany and the children. Everything's paid for, darling. We simply can't cancel past the 7-day mark. A wave of nausea washed over me. Mom, Dad, this isn't about convenience. Lily's life, her future. It's hanging by a thread. The better procedure, the one with a 95% success rate, is critical. The alternative, it carries a significant risk of permanent damage. My father coughed, a dry, dismissive sound. Well, if the insurance covers the other one, perhaps it's perfectly adequate. Elara, sometimes these doctors, they just try to upsell you on expensive procedures. You know, my mother added, her tone sugary sweet. You're very emotional right now, dear, and I understand that. But you really should slow down before making big financial decisions, especially with your unique employment situation. My unique employment situation. I snapped, the carefully constructed calm cracking. I have 2 jobs. I've always paid my bills. I've helped pay your bills when you needed it. My mother's voice hardened. That's not fair. Elara, you chose to do that. We never asked. I clenched my jaw. I chose to do that because I thought you'd do the same for me. For Lily. Another long pause, filled with the distant sound of their vacation preparations. We're not comfortable taking on that kind of financial risk right now. Elara, my mother concluded softly, her voice betraying not a hint of genuine regret. It's a family thing, this trip. Bethany's kids have been looking forward to it for months. I hung up, the phone feeling heavy and cold in my hand. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply sat on the hard hospital bench, staring at the sterile white walls. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just a mother in crisis anymore. I was a woman, with nothing left to lose, and a daughter to protect. My parents, their words, their utter indifference, painted a picture I had unknowingly avoided for decades. I used to tell people I had a normal family. Not perfect, but normal, emotionally constipated into budget vacations, passive-aggressive, but normal. The truth now stared back at me with the clarity of a freshly scrubbed operating room floor. My childhood had been a subtle form of erasure. My younger sister, Bethany, 2 years my junior, had always been the golden child, bathed in the warmth of our parents' unwavering favoritism. While I received hand-me-downs, Bethany got brand new clothes. My Barbies were missing limbs. Hers were pristine. Oh, we're in a better financial place now. My mother would shrug, as if 2 years could bridge a generational gap in wealth. Bethany's sweet 16 was a lavish affair. Mine a quiet dinner at a local diner, followed by a lecture on gratitude. I swallowed it all, telling myself this was just how families worked, how some of us were destined to sit quietly on the sidelines while others received the deluxe version of childhood. When I got pregnant with Lily at 20, I wasn't just overlooked. I became the cautionary tale. Lily's father was a mistake I quickly rectified, a verbally abusive shadow I promptly removed from our lives. Naively, I expected a shred of pride from my parents when I stood up for myself. Instead, my mother simply asked if I planned to move back home. When I said no, she looked visibly relieved. No offers of help, no babysitting, no questions about how I was coping. They remained on the periphery, treating my single motherhood as a personal humiliation, even when no one else was watching. I poured myself into my work. During the week, I was an HR assistant, and on weekends, I coached clients. often with a quiet Lily coloring in the back of the room during my seminars. She never complained, never once asked why her grandparents never called. She seemed to understand early on that love in our family came with invisible strings, and she simply wasn't the favorite. I made it work. I never asked them for a penny, not when rent climbed, not when Lily needed braces, not even during a severe flu that left me hallucinating my own voicemail. Over time, something insidious happened. The roles subtly flipped. After their retirement, my parents downsized into a lavish condo with a rooftop hot tub. Helps with Dad's back pain, my mother had announced. And the guest bathroom lighting at the old place just wasn't flattering. I, the overlooked child, quietly started helping with their expenses. A few hundred here, a mortgage top-up there. I never tracked it, never expected anything in return. I just thought that's what family did. That's what they would have done for me. Right, wrong. Bethany never chipped in, not once. But her children, they got everything, laptops, ski vacations, even an in-ground trampoline built right into their backyard. I still don't understand why anyone needs a trampoline buried in their lawn. But they had one. The silence from my parents after my call was deafening. But it wasn't my first time experiencing their particular brand of indifference. I had always found a way. I opened my laptop, the screen reflecting my weary face. The emergency loan form wasn't complicated. Just long, click here if you accept the interest rate. Click here if you agree to the terms. Click here if you're out of options. I submitted it. The digital paperwork a stark reminder of my isolation. Approved. But only partially. Without a cosigner. I qualified for barely a third of what I needed. So, I did something I had sworn I would never do again. I called them back. My father answered alone this time. "Hello?" He sounded wary. "It's me," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I found a loan, but I need a cosigner for the full amount. You wouldn't have to pay a cent. I'd handle everything." Another long pause. One of their signature pauses. Heavy with unspoken refusal. "Look, your mother and I talked," he finally said, his voice hesitant. "We're not comfortable putting our names on any financial paperwork right now, especially with all the uncertainty these days." "Uncertainty?" I shot back, the word a bitter taste in my mouth. "Like your granddaughter's brain trauma, her future." "It's not that simple, Elara," he insisted, his voice rising slightly. "I've had identity theft concerns in the past. You never know with online lenders." "It's a bank." "Dad," I clarified, my voice a dull thud. "I'm sorry," he said, a hollow apology. "I really am." I simply nodded, even though he couldn't see me, and hung up. This time, I didn't sit down. Something inside me had hardened. The quiet, capable daughter they expected, the one who never made a scene, was gone. I was a woman with nothing left to lose, and a daughter to protect. That moment when all the weird, little slights from your past suddenly align like puzzle pieces, and the ugly picture you've been avoiding finally stares back at you. That was me, in the hospital waiting room, running on vending machine coffee and pure, unadulterated fury. My parents were exactly who they'd always been. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I started making calls, scrolling past every number that shared my DNA. It felt like an act of rebellion. I called a former colleague I'd only ever exchanged polite emails with. "Hi, it's Elara Evans from HR. Sorry to call out of nowhere. My daughter Lily is in the hospital. Accident. She needs urgent surgery. The good one, it's expensive. And I know this is insane, but would you be willing to..." Before I could finish, she said yes. And it wasn't just her, a retired English teacher of Lily's, whom I hadn't seen in years, offered to send what she could from her pension. A distant cousin I barely knew Venmoed $500 with a note that simply said, "For Lily. Don't worry about it." Lily's drama club director shared the situation in a private group chat. A woman I'd never met, a parent from Lily's school, showed up at the hospital with snacks, toothbrushes, and a $100 bill folded into a sympathy card. People came out of the woodwork. Not family. Not the people who raised me. Just everyone else. It wasn't cozy. It wasn't warm and fuzzy. It was humiliating. I cried in the hospital bathroom after the fifth call. Not because of the money, but because these weren't people who owed me anything. They weren't people I'd sacrificed for, covered bills for, or helped through their crises. These were strangers. And they were doing more for Lily in one afternoon than my own parents had done in 18 years. That humiliation, that raw burning shame, it turned into fuel. Every awkward ask, every embarrassed breath, it was defiance. They wanted me to disappear quietly. I wasn't going anywhere. I started keeping a spreadsheet, half to track what I'd repay, half to stop myself from unraveling. Each name on that list felt like a tiny, silent declaration against the people who had said no. Then, just as the weight of my exhaustion felt unbearable, the door to the waiting room opened. Lily's best friend, Maya, walked in with her mother, Mrs. Davies. Mrs. Davies didn't say a word. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. She reached into her purse, pulled out a sleek and one black credit card, and placed it in my hand. $50,000 limit. Use what you need, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I started shaking, trying to hand it back, babbling something about interest rates and repayment schedules and moral boundaries. She cut me off. "You're a good mom, Elara," she said. "Let people be good to you." I didn't even know how to process that, but she wasn't wrong. The surgery was paid in full, on time, in cash. I signed the consent forms with a borrowed pen and a trembling hand. Lily went into surgery with the best team, the best odds, and the best chance at a full recovery. And still, not a word from my parents. Except, of course, when they found out people were talking. You see, some of the folks I called, they knew my parents. They'd seen the glowing social media photos, the cruise, the matching outfits, the luxury suite upgrades. And when word got around that those same people refused to help their granddaughter get life-saving surgery, let's just say the whispers got loud. No, I didn't post anything. But someone did. I don't know who. Maybe Lily's friend, Maya. Maybe a neighbor who'd seen their endless boasts. Maybe Karma herself. All I know is, 3 days later, my mother called me 6 times in a row. No voicemail, just endless rings. My dad texted, "Call us immediately." I didn't. I let them stew. I let them sweat. I had more important things to focus on, like keeping Lily alive and upright. And that's when the other call came. Not from a parent, not from a friend, from a lawyer. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Friendly, familiar. "Hi, Elara, it's Arthur Davies, your grandmother's attorney. I heard about Lily. I'm so sorry. Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure," bracing myself. "Did your daughter ever get access to her inheritance?" I blinked. "What inheritance?" There was a long pause on his end, then a bewildered, "The trust fund. Elara, Margaret left it all to Lily. I know. I wrote it myself." I just sat there, gripping my phone like it might melt. What I finally managed, it was all in a trust. Your parents were just trustees. It was supposed to be released to Lily when she turned 17. She turned 17 months ago. Arthur swore under his breath. They never notified the bank, never filed the transfer paperwork, nothing. So, They just kept it. Yes, he said, his voice grim. That's not just unethical. That's theft. She's a legal adult. That money was never theirs. And that's when the picture finally clicked into agonizing focus. All of it. The trips to Greece, the luxury handbags for my mother, the lavish gifts for Bethany's kids, the brand new sleek SUV with a giant bow on top, like something straight out of a commercial. The way my parents had suddenly stopped needing my small financial top-ups for their mortgage. They hadn't just failed to help Lily. They had used her money, Lily's inheritance, to buy themselves a better life, a more opulent facade, and never said a word. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They had refused to save their grandchild with her own money. That night, I told Lily everything. I expected tears, or rage, or disbelief. What I got was worse. Silence. She listened, arms folded, face blank, like I'd short-circuited her ability to feel. They said they loved me, she finally said, her voice flat. All those Sunday dinners, the books Grandma gave me, the dumb math game she used to play. I know, I whispered. They didn't even tell me. They just took it. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She looked down at her lap, picked at a loose thread on her hoodie. Can we do something? She asked, her voice barely audible. Yes, I said, meeting her gaze. We can. I called Arthur the next morning. He walked us through everything, and there would be paperwork, proceedings, maybe even court. Lily listened carefully, her eyes sharp. I want it back, she said, her voice gaining strength. You will, Arthur promised. And I want them to answer for it. He looked at me, then back at Lily. Are you sure? Once this starts, it doesn't stop. Lily didn't hesitate. They made choices. So will I. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, calls, signatures, and strategy sessions. Arthur wasn't just a good lawyer. He was tenacious, with a quiet determination. He'd adored my grandmother. They messed with the wrong girl, he told me once. His eyes narrowed. It took everything in me not to cry in that moment, because for the first time in weeks, someone saw Lily as more than a problem to be ignored. He saw her as someone worth fighting for. And so did I. Several months after we handed them that letter, the civil trial finally began. Lily didn't blink. I've never seen her look so calm. Her hands were steady. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were sharp enough to cut through concrete. That courtroom wasn't intimidating to her. It was a finish line. Meanwhile, my parents showed up with a lawyer who looked like he got paid by the syllable. He smiled too much and used phrases like disproportionate bequest and questionable testamentary capacity. Translation, they were arguing the trust was unfair. Grandma was probably confused, and Lily had no business being the sole heir. Nice try. Arthur, our lawyer and Grandma Margaret's longtime friend, didn't even flinch. He had bank records, transaction logs, and the original notarized trust documents. He even had dated copies of emails Grandma had sent him, saying, Lily reminded her of herself. One of them ended with, she's the only one who listens when I talk about compound interest. That alone deserves a fortune. Their lawyer pivoted. Maybe the parents were just holding the money temporarily, he argued. She had just turned 17. Arthur didn't even raise his voice. He just asked why they hadn't said anything, why they had already drained part of the funds on cruises and car gifts and spa weekends, why there was zero record of any attempt to transfer the money to Lily, or even inform her it existed. The judge asked for silence twice. Once because my parents were whispering furiously to each other, and once because Lily quietly chuckled under her breath. Then came the verdict. They were ordered to repay every last cent of what was rightfully Lily's, having breached fiduciary duty and misused the funds. They had no legal or moral standing to keep the money. Except, to our surprise, they didn't have it anymore. They'd spent a substantial chunk, not most, but enough that their current assets couldn't cover it. The court seized everything: the sprawling house with the perfect lawn, the gleaming SUV, their retirement accounts, their vacation property, a so-called art collection my mother used to brag about, even the pearl necklace she once said I'd never be classy enough to inherit. They ended up in a cramped rental near a freeway, the kind of place where you don't open windows if you want to sleep through the night. Extended family cut contact, friends ghosted. They still hadn't apologized. Lily and Elara have ruined the family, my mother reportedly told a neighbor who asked why they were selling their furniture on social media. Lily was quiet afterward, not celebratory, just clear, resolved. They didn't just steal money, she said one night, staring at the wall like it had betrayed her too. They risked my life, and they still act like I should be the one to get over it. I didn't argue. She was right. A week later, she gave Arthur the green light to proceed with criminal charges. He gave a single nod. "It won't be easy," he said. "I've already walked tougher paths," Lily replied. To my surprise, the criminal case moved more quickly than I anticipated. Maybe it gained momentum because someone leaked part of the civil case summary and the media latched onto it. Or maybe the district attorney genuinely cared. Or perhaps it was just a rare week when justice was in a good mood. Their new attorney was no less dramatic than the last: loud, overpriced, and increasingly frantic. I found myself wondering how they were even affording him. They pointed fingers in every direction at Grandma, at the financial system, at the bank, at the pressures of retirement. At one point, they even tried the "we thought she'd squander it" defense, which earned a very visible eye roll from the judge. The verdict came down: guilty, financial theft, breach of fiduciary duty, deception involving a legal heir. Due to their age and the fact that the crime was nonviolent, the judge sentenced them to 1 year of probation and community service. Instead of enjoying sunsets in Santorini, they were now collecting trash and organizing documents at city offices. Photos made their way online. My mother in a neon orange vest, scowling at a fast food wrapper like it had personally insulted her. My father looking helpless, broom in hand. We didn't share the images, but we certainly saw them. Then Arthur called again. "Are you sitting down?" he asked. Turns out my parents had attempted to move a significant sum from accounts they had failed to disclose during the civil case, funneling the money into an offshore platform under my Aunt Julia's name. There was a digital trail leading straight back to them. "It's a clear violation of the court order," Arthur said. "We're filing again." The second trial didn't drag. Fraud, intent to conceal assets, attempting to avoid repayment. This time, they came to court dressed in the same outfits they wore for community service. For once, my mother said nothing. My father didn't look at anyone. Even their lawyer kept a flat expression. The judge sentenced them to 1 year in actual prison. No suspension, no plea deal, no loophole. They were handcuffed in front of us and escorted out of the courtroom. The silence in the room was profound. A final, unyielding judgment. I didn't feel triumph. I felt justice. And something else. Something gentler. Relief. Lily finally received the remainder of her inheritance. It wasn't the full amount, but it was still enough to change her life. She cleared her medical debts, set aside funds for college, and then, without even consulting me, opened an investment account. She called it Project Smile, a quiet tribute to Grandma Margaret. Lily once told me she wanted it to be something that built good into the world, unlike the greed she'd witnessed. When the final documents arrived, she handled the filing herself. She added just one handwritten line to the folder. Some people don't deserve forgiveness, only consequences. I didn't write a word in response. I only nodded. Our new life had truly begun.